Hello there. Pokemon Yellow is a truly iconic title amongst games, and I've wanted to go back and replay it for a while now. So after playing the remake Let's Go Pikachu, I decided to do just that. Pokemon Yellow was the first game that I really got into when I was a kid. It released in the UK in the year 2000 when I was 7 years old. I know I'm old as f***, but just like everyone back then, I was hooked. Over the years, I owned and played almost all the games. I collected the cards, the toys, the movies, and these weird little magnet things. I adored the TV show, and through that I even got into anime. Good stuff like Dragon Ball Z. I'm not a weeb. Eventually, however, I lost or gave away most of my games, and I have no idea what happened to my cards. And if you've seen the price of them now, like, kind of makes me want to kill myself. Despite that though, the Pokemon franchise is still very important to me, and I still play the games to this day. So because of that, I think it's only right for me to start off this channel with the franchise that got me into gaming. With these videos, I plan to talk about what playing games is like for the average person. There's more than enough 4-hour deep dives and retrospectives on YouTube that I'm not knowledgeable enough to produce, so I'm going to try and make these more like short reviews, because personally I don't really care who made the game or what the creator named their cat. For me, if I enjoy the experience, then that's all that matters. So to help me break down my thoughts on the game, we're going to be looking at the following 5 things. Number 1, the story and the setting. Number 2, how the game plays. Number 3, the characters. Number 4, how the game performs. And finally, I'm going to finish everything off with number 5, the conclusion. With all that being said, I'm going to be as vague as I can when I can. So if you plan on playing this game yourself, then there'll still be plenty more for you to discover. But obviously, there are going to be spoilers, so you have been warned. Pokemon games are notorious for having little to no story, although for me, that's not always a bad thing. Unless I'm invested in a game, I tend to commit unspeakable acts to my controllers while cutscenes are playing. When I was young, I skipped almost all the dialogue in games, and I still kind of do it now, but there was a ton of times I missed what the game was telling me to do next, and I just wandered around hopelessly until I figured it out. And that's a major reason I wanted to start this kind of channel, so I could slow down and learn why these games are so highly praised. Unfortunately though, going back and replaying Pokemon Yellow wasn't the experience I thought it would be. I just didn't really enjoy it as much as I thought I would. I almost gave up on making YouTube videos, and I hadn't even started yet. So let's talk about the story. Pokemon Yellow takes place in the Kanto region, starting off in a sleepy little place called Pallet Town. And these games typically all start the same way. We choose which Pokemon we want to start with, we're introduced to our rival, and then we're sent off on our journey by a Pokemon researcher to do a job for them they're too fucking lazy to do themselves. Yeah, I said it. Although one thing Pokemon Yellow does differently is that, unlike Red and Blue where we choose between Charmander, Squirtle and Bulbasaur, in this game we start our journey with the iconic yellow mouse, Pikachu. However, we do get a chance to collect all the original stars later on in the game, which is a nice reward for players who interact with the people who inhabit the world. Our main objective in the game, of course, is to battle gym leaders and eventually face off with the Pokemon League to become the Kanto champion. Throughout our journey, we compete and battle against our main rival, who we get to name, so you could name him after a friend or whatever. His official name is Blue, but I've just named him Gary, after Gary Coleman, obviously. We run into Mr. Coleman multiple times, and it really keeps you on your toes because he just pops up every now and then, and if you aren't prepared, then he might just beat the shit out of you and your Pokemon. Although, somewhere along the way, we end up getting mixed up with Team Rocket. Team Rocket are an evil criminal organisation that wants to take over the world by stealing Pokemon from people, I guess. Naturally, we fight our way through their ranks, eventually facing off with our leader, the big bad, Giovanni. Doing this, we, a child, put an end to their evil criminal ways by defeating Giovanni in Pokemon battles. Because just like in real life, the police are f***ing useless. But there is a nice little twist in the story at the end of the game when... Wait, I'll get to that in a second. First, we need to discuss the Pokemon gyms. Pokemon gyms are the main challenge of the game and will have you travelling from town to town to find them. They are tests of strength along our journey that have you battle a few trainers and then take on the leader of the gym at the end. After defeating the gym leader, you will be rewarded with a badge that will allow you to progress through the story and reach the next town. And once you collect them all, then you will be granted access to the Pokemon League. There are 8 different gym leaders in the game, meaning you have to collect 8 badges. If you don't know how to do maths, and go back to school. And they all use Pokemon of different types. For example, one will use fire type Pokemon, one will use water, etc, etc. And this adds a cool challenge to the game, as you need to kind of build a team that is able to deal with multiple different scenarios. Although each gym tends to have an aesthetic that suits the element the gym leader uses, and sometimes they even have a little puzzle for you to solve, which is pretty cool. The first gym leader you will encounter is Impure City, and fans of the show will recognise him as the undisputed king of horniness, hard as a rock, Brock. and he uses rock type Pokemon. The second in Cerulean City is another main character from the show, the red-headed goat herself, Misty, and she uses water type Pokemon. The third is located in Vermilion City, and this gym is run by a dude bro who also doubles as a Lieutenant Guy lookalike, Lieutenant Surge, and he uses electric type Pokemon. The fourth gym leader in Celadon City is Erica, a pretty looking Maiko / geisha girl. She uses grass type Pokemon. Continuing on with the traditional Japanese aesthetic, we have Koga, the historically accurate, don't look it up, ninja, located in Future City, and he uses poison types. Now, the sixth. This gym leader, in my opinion, wins the sexiest gym leader of the generation trophy. This little psychopath found in Saffron City is named Sabrina, and she uses psychic type Pokemon. I should probably mention in Saffron City there is another gym here, although it doesn't give you a badge to help you progress towards the league. It's a totally optional gym that is now just a dojo filled with martial artists, and at the end you get to choose between either Hitmonchan or Hitmonlee as your reward. I think this is the only game they have an optional gym like this in. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. Okay, the seventh gym leader located in Cinnabar Island is Dr. Eggman's skinny cousin, Blaine, and he uses fire type Pokemon. And finally, we come to the twist I alluded to earlier. The eighth and last gym leader is in Viridian City, a town we visit extremely early in the game, although the first visit has us figure out that the gym leader is not around and it's shrouded in mystery. Well, it turns out to be Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket himself, and he uses ground type Pokemon because he's the only one grounded in reality. It makes total sense that a corrupt crime lord would be in a position of power, and after beating all the gym leaders, we are now ready to make our way to the Pokemon League. Here, we face off against the Elite Four. So these guys are the strongest trainers in Kanto and the final test for people looking to be the very best like no one ever was. The Elite Four consist of Lorelei, Bruno, Agatha, and Lance. And first, we have to battle Lorelei. Lorelei has mastered ice type Pokemon and also the art of looking like a sexy secretary. Oh yeah. She uses a Dugong, Cloyster, Slowbro, Jinx, and the iconic Lapras. Second, we have Bruno. Bruno is a master of fighting and rock type Pokemon, and I personally think he's one of the coolest looking trainers in the whole franchise. It kinda looks like if Ryu and Akuma from Street Fighter had a baby. He uses an Onix, Hitmonchan, Hitmonlee, another Onix, and a Goro. I mean the Machamp. Third, we have Agatha. This old bitch uses Ghost and Poison type Pokemon and was a rival. This old bitch uses Ghost and Poison type Pokemon and was a rival as This old bitch uses Ghost and Poison type Pokemon and was a rival of Professor Oak when they were both young. This old bitch uses Ghost and Poison type Pokemon and was a rival of Professor Oak when they were both young. She uses Gengar, Golbat, Haunter, Arbok, and another Gengar. And finally, we make it to Lance. Lance is a pretty cool character, looks like he stepped straight out of the Castlevania franchise, and he uses the mythical dragon type Pokemon. His team consists of Gyarados, Dragonair, another Dragonair, Aerodactyl, and a Dragonite. And once you've defeated all the Elite Four, you are now crowned champ. Nope, we still have one more battle left. Our rival. Gary, aka Mr. Coleman, made it here before us, and now we have to take him on one last time to decide who truly is the best like no one ever was. For our last battle, he uses a Sandslash, Alakazam, Executor, Magneton, Cloyster, and a Flareon. It's a tough battle, but eventually we take him down and all of our hard work pays off. We are now crowned champion of Kanto. After beating the league and becoming the champion, we are congratulated by Professor Oak and we get our data stored into the Hall of Fame. And that is it. That's where our journey ends. But some of you may have noticed I haven't talked about the legendary Pokemon yet. Now the reason I left them to the end is because technically they're side content. They're not even part of the main story. You could go through the entire game and never even know they existed. We have the legendary birds, Moltres, Zapdos, and my favourite, Articuno. They're scattered around the map, and if you're exploring every nook and cranny then you will find them. But if you're just thundering ahead with the story and you're not really paying attention, then you can miss some, and that would be pretty shit. Then we have the legendary Mewtwo. Mewtwo is located in a cave in Cerulean City, like really early on in the game. Before being the Pokemon League, there's a man that's standing in front of the cave entrance, and if you speak to him, he won't let you in. But if you come back here after defeating the league, he will. And again, unless you remember to come back here after defeating the league, you could likely miss out on catching arguably the most iconic legendary Pokemon from the entire franchise. I suppose Game Freak wanted to make the legendary Pokemon hard to find to reward people who really dug deep into the world and explored, but I think it could have been handled a little bit better. And finally, there's Mew. Although you are unable to catch Mew through regular means like the other legendary Pokemon. If you want one, you'll have to either follow some complicated guide to glitch it into your game, or use a cheat cartridge assuming you aren't using an emulator, which I know you are. Even then, I'm not sure if the glitch works in yellow. But there is a great video by Josh Strife Hayes that I'll link in the description below, where he shows you how to get Mew in Pokemon Red and Blue. And that's it for the story, I guess. So let's have a look at number 2, how the game plays. At the time of recording this video, Pokemon Yellow is in its mid-20s, and just like people in their mid-20s, this game has a lot of issues. From the flashy animations, to the item bag becoming full at the worst times. Also, we can't run, which makes it so we have to slowly walk around for a while before we get a bike or unlock the ability to use a Pokemon to fly us about. And in order to use HMs, which are important game mechanics by the way, I need to go into my Pokemon list every time and select it, to use it. What the f***? I understand that it's because of hardware limitations that we need to suffer through this shit, but it doesn't stop it from being annoying. Speaking of HMs, in the game we get these things called TMs and HMs. TM stands for Technical Machine, and these are one-time use items that teach moves to Pokemon to use inside a battle, like Blizzard, Psychic, Earthquake, etc, etc. There's a ton of different TMs you can either buy or find outside while you're walking around, but the game doesn't let you know which TM is which until you use it, which is shit. And then we have HMs. HM stands for Hidden Machine. And hidden machines are special abilities we can teach to our Pokemon to use in and outside of battle. All in, we get 5 different HMs. HM1 is Cut, and it enables us to cut down small trees that block our path. HM2 is Fly, and this lets us fly back and forward from towns we've already been to. HM3 is Surf, letting us ride on our Pokemon's back across the bodies of water. HM4 is Strength, and this lets us move large boulders in caves. And finally we have HM5, which is Flash, and this lets us flash our Pokeballs to the opposing team. What? That's not what it does. What was that doing then? HM5 emits a large light which illuminates dark caves, apparently. These are all important in their own way, and we need to use them to progress through the game. Although in Yellow, once a Pokemon learns a HM, it can never unlearn it, so you have to carefully choose who you want to teach them to. Or you can have a Pokemon as a HM slave, but I rarely ever do that, because I'm progressive, so I just spread my HMs around like STDs. And that brings us to our party. Pokemon games only allow you to carry a maximum of 6 Pokemon with you at a time, so you'll have to carefully build a party that you like or that you find useful. I think it's normal to build your team to have different elements to deal with different situations. I don't have a problem with this, although it does leave you with a ton of unused Pokemon in your Pokemon storage. But that's kind of the catchphrase of the game, right? Go out and slave them all. The Pokemon storage can be accessed via the PC in the Pokemon Center, and you have a bunch of different boxes in which you can store Pokemon. Although if you fill up one of your boxes and don't switch to an empty one, then you won't be able to catch any more Pokemon. In the PC, we also have item storage. This is one of the most useful mechanics in the game for one of the most frustrating reasons. While replaying Pokemon Yellow, I completely forgot that the item bag has a limit to how much items can be held in it, so I was constantly having to drop items to pick up new ones. It got to the point where I was just selling everything I wasn't going to be using and storing everything in the PC that I thought I might want to use later. And I'm a bit of an item hoarder in games, so this hurt me. Some people probably won't even have much of an issue with this, and I suppose it kind of makes sense that I can't carry a million different things in my bag, but it's pretty inconvenient. Now, the only good thing about having to use a PC all the time is that the PC is found inside the Pokemon Center. Pokemon Centers are found in most towns and cities, and they are run by this sexy little senorita, Nurse Joy. Nurse Joy lets you come here whenever you want to heal your Pokemon for free. So a lot of times, instead of using my potions to heal, I would just run back to the sweet embrace of my pixelated waifu. She even tells me she hopes to see me again soon every time I leave. She just can't get enough of me. Oh, there's also another pixelated lady at the next counter that lets you trade Pokemon with your friends or whatever, but you'll need a link cable to do that. And friends. Or just do what I do. Buy 2 Game Boys. There are some NPCs around the region who are willing to trade their Pokemon with you though, so friends who need them, we've got Nurse Joy. Another place you'll have to visit a lot is the Pokemart. Unfortunately though, they're not run by a sexy nurse like the Pokemon Center is, but Pokemarts are found close by the Pokemon Center in every main location. Here we can buy all the supplies we need like potions and Pokeballs, and like I mentioned earlier, we can sell unwanted items here too. Also, the further you progress into the game, the shops will start to stock better gear for you to use, which makes battling trainers and catching Pokemon a lot easier. Which brings us to the main thing you're going to be doing throughout this game. Pokemon battles. Pokemon battles are pretty much one of the main reasons people play these games, I guess, and Pokemon uses a turn-based battle system. If you don't know what that means basically means I go, you go. I go, you go. Like a game of chess, and just like chess, it's surprisingly complex. I'm not going to go into much depth about it though, as the first script I wrote for this was basically a playthrough, and I did a deep dive into the battle system. It was just boring. It was just boring explanations of what everything means and does, and it was just boring. But if you're new to Pokemon, it takes a lot of trial and error to figure everything out. So just play and learn by doing. Remember kids, guides ruin games. Other than gym leaders in the Elite Four, we will run into other trainers like ourselves on every route leading to different towns. And if you walk into the line of sight, which in most cases is unavoidable, they will initiate a battle. There is attacking and defensive moves and abilities that inflict status conditions like poison, sleep and confusion. And the type of Pokemon you use can be the reason you win or lose a match. Meaning that if the Pokemon I'm using is a fire type, maybe shouldn't use it to fight a water type. After winning a battle, the trainer will give you some money for winning. And your Pokemon will gain experience points that allow them to level up and become stronger, but I'll get to that in a second. I will say though, I've been playing these games for years at this point, and even I was surprised just how difficult it was going back to Yellow. It really did catch me off guard a few times, as the newer games in the series are just not as difficult, or in some way they're more forgiving in my opinion. So you really do need to prepare and use everything to your advantage while battling in this one. Speaking of catching things off guard, let's talk about catching Pokemon. Catching Pokemon in Yellow is very much the same as the rest of the games. At the beginning we are given a Pokedex that works as a library of the Pokemon we have seen and captured. This allows us to check the location Pokemon are in and gives us a little bit of background information on them as well. Once we find them, we have to weaken them by relentlessly attacking them and then throwing either a Pokeball, Great Ball or an Ultra Ball at them, although success isn't guaranteed. So the best method to capture them is to weaken them, inflict them with a status condition like sleeper paralysis, and then throw our balls at their face until they give up and become our slave. I know, when you think about it, these games are completely f***ed up, but as you progress through the game, you will need to buy better equipment to give you better odds at successfully capturing. As I mentioned before, you get Pokeballs, which are the basic bitch Pokeball, Great Balls, which are the average Andy Pokeball, Ultra Balls, which are the dependable Debbie Pokeballs, and finally, the Master Ball, which is the ruiner of what should be the most epic moment in the game Pokeball. Take a look at this. I know, exciting. So it's pretty much the same as the other games. We only get one Master Ball though, but still. The other games do have other kinds of Pokeballs, but I'll get to them when I get to them. One thing I don't think is a feature in any of the other games is that when I was trying to catch the legendary Pokemon, I was throwing my balls at them. I was really thrusting away, but they just kept on missing. I eventually caught them all, but I completely forgot that this was a thing that could happen in this game. Finally, let's talk about evolution. Pokemon evolution is a big reason I play these games. When I was a kid and my Pokemon would start to evolve, I can't even explain the excitement that I felt. After leveling up, some of your Pokemon will evolve into their next form. Some can evolve once, some twice, and others just can't evolve. Although one thing I've always hated is that for some Pokemon like Machoke, Haunter and Kadabra, you have to trade them with someone in order to evolve them. And then, trust that person enough so they send them back to you. Or as previously mentioned, by owning another Game Boy and a copy of the game. And this only gets worse as we move forward in the franchise. I get the Game Freak wanted to make as much money as it could by selling the same game twice with different Pokemon in them to kids who wanted to catch them all. What am I saying? That's not what they were doing. They just wanted people to socialise, battle and trade with friends, and obviously. Seriously though, if you were a kid that didn't have siblings or friends who enjoyed these games, then I guess it sucks to be you. Growing up in a family that didn't have a lot of money, there was no way I was going to convince my mum to fork out cash to buy me the same game twice. So I was never really able to use Pokemon like Alakazam growing up. Obviously I wasn't surprised this time around when my Pokemon evolved, although when a new game comes out I try my best to go in blind, so I can have that experience again and get excited when a member of my party begins to evolve. And I'd recommend you do the same if you're a newcomer to the series. There's also Pokemon that evolve using elemental stones, which is a cool concept, but I can't remember it ever being explained or even alluded to. Like, I could be wrong, but the information you need in regards to using items to evolve Pokemon has always been lacking. Again, this gets worse the further we get into the series, when more and more items other than the evolution stones are added, but even in Yellow this was an issue. Anyway, let's move on and talk about number 3, the characters. Characters and their backstories in Yellow don't exactly get fleshed out. Like, our main character is supposed to represent us, so they are a silent protagonist, which is fine. So that leaves the supporting cast like Gary, Professor Oak, Giovanni, and the other gym leaders to receive the limelight. It's very dim light, but it's there. Dialogue in this game is very basic, but if you talk to NPCs and explore the world, you will find bits of lore and history scattered around, either about the gym leader or the towns you visit. Gary goes from being a bit of a to learning to treat his Pokemon and us with respect. Professor Oak tells us that he's getting too old to continue his research out in the field, and later on the Elite Four member Agatha tells us that he used to be a handsome young trainer. Giovanni goes from being a mob boss to realising the error of his ways, and if you watch the original anime, you may recognise the gym leaders, specifically Misty and Brock. Jesse and James from Team Rocket make a few appearances, which I think is cool. Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny are here too, but they're pretty hard to miss. Also, we meet this guy named Bill that invented the Pokemon storage system, and he accidentally transforms himself into a Pokemon for some reason. Yellow has a good cast of characters, so I'm not going to go into too much detail so you can discover them for yourself, and in many ways I'd consider the actual Pokemon as characters in these games. So let's take a minute to appreciate them, shall we? The roster from the first generation of Pokemon, in my opinion, are the best. It's just the original 151 Pokemon have a ton of great minimalist designs, starting with the mascot of the series, Pikachu, and the underappreciated evolved form, Raichu. We've also got Cypher, Electabuzz, Nidoking, Nidoqueen, Alakazam, Gengar, Gyarados, Lapras, Pidgeot, Dragonite, Snorlax, Machamp. Christ, we even have Arcanine and Ninetales, who got their original evolutions, Jolteon, Vaporeon and Flareon. The starters, Charmander, Bulbasaur and Squirtle, and their evolved forms are just and the legendaries are all perfect as well. Again, I know this is a very subjective thing, so if you want to cry about it, leave a wrong opinion in the comments and I'll be sure to ignore you. Because it's time to piss off some other people as we talk about number 4, how the game performs. Obviously, this game doesn't look like your steroid-fueled digital deluxe edition Last of Us 2 remaster remake, but these old Game Boy graphics are timeless. The pixel aesthetics are a thing of beauty, although that doesn't mean I enjoy going back to play these games. And that's mostly because of the graphics. I know, I'm a walking contradiction, but look, I grew up dreaming of a 3D Pokemon world. When I first played Pokemon Snap and Pokemon Stadium back on the N64, and then Gale of Darkness and Colosseum on the GameCube, my small peanut-sized brain was well and truly roasted. Legends Arceus was far from perfect, but it was a great example of what these games could be. And I know a lot of people hated Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet too, but I really enjoyed playing them, I'm not gonna lie. Although, like a lot of the fan base, I'm still waiting for that 3D Pokemon game we all dreamed of. So for me personally, it is kind of hard going back to the 2D games. Admittedly, the Pokemon sprites in yellow are pretty cool, and they are leagues better than they were in red and blue. In its defense, unlike the newer games where a lot of people were finding glitches galore, I don't think I ever encountered a bug or glitch in the early Pokemon games. I've seen people complain about the soft locks, glitches and bugs and things like that online in regards to yellow, but I've been playing these games for 20 plus years and I've had nothing. So regardless or not of whether I enjoy it, it does perform extremely well, especially for a Game Boy game that's almost as old as I am. The music on the other hand is great. I know all the theme tunes from each town and area, and that's more than I can say about the newer games. So with all that, it's time to end this video. Like I said at the start, Pokemon Yellow was the first time I really got into gaming. I'd played plenty of games before it, but there's just something about Pokemon that rubs me the right way. I loved exploring the world and finding new Pokemon to train and collect. Imagine what it would be like to live in a world like that, where I could just hop on my Charizard's back and fly to school. This franchise has kept me happy in more ways than one in my miserable little life, and I wouldn't be the same person I am today without them. So it's a little disappointing that I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought it would. The game on its own is a solid experience regardless of me enjoying it. It does exactly what it tends to do. It introduces you to a fantasy story and world and lets you lose yourself in it. If you can get past the aged graphics, then by all means give it a go. Like, why not? Personally, I wouldn't recommend Yellow to people looking to get into Pokemon. I'd probably point them towards the remakes Fire Red or Leaf Green if they wanted to start from the first generation. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu was a brilliant remake of Yellow, don't get me wrong, and I had a great time playing it, but the catching mechanics are more like Pokemon Go, and that makes it feel more kind of like its own thing. So if you're looking for a more authentic first gen experience with better graphics and a ton of quality of life improvements, I'd just go for Fire Red or Leaf Green first, and then maybe come back to Yellow later. And speaking of the remakes, I might make videos on them at some point down the line if you're interested. So was Pokemon Yellow an average experience? I mean, I think it is. The reason I named this series an average experience is because too many people call games deep because of their story or the greatest game of all time, like the person on Reddit. But I just don't see games that way. Like, stories in games typically aren't that great, and I've never considered any one game to be the greatest of all time. Like, I have my favourites, but they all have flaws. There's a ton of deep dives on games that leave me impressed with the YouTuber's vocabulary and use of dramatic writing, but I can tell that person making a video is extremely invested in the game in one way or another, and they're so nitpicky about stupid little things. And that's fine. Those kind of videos can be very entertaining, and I watch multiple different YouTubers who make content just like that. But I believe they also fail to think about the average person viewpoint a lot of the time when they are telling them that the game is good or bad for whatever reason, without taking into consideration the fact that they are emotionally invested in a way that the viewer isn't. And then that viewer might miss out on an experience they may have loved based on the fact that a YouTuber they look up to didn't like it. Do you know how many people still consider No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk to be the worst games of all time based on the early reviews, even though they haven't played it themselves? Well, guess what? Both of those games are great now, and I love them. If someone gets invested in a game or a series and plays them for thousands of hours, then don't let them tell you it's bad once they get bored of it. They got invested in it for a reason, and you could too if you just gave it a try. So on a scale of 1 to 6 Pokeballs, I'll give Yellow a solid 3. For me, Pokemon Yellow is indeed an average experience. I think it's important to remember that this series was made with the intention to have the player feel like a kid exploring the world and discovering new things. Playing video games is great, and I love them, and I spend far too much money and time on them. But sometimes I forget to just go out and touch some grass, you know what I mean? So if you can and you're able, try to get outside every now and then. It's good for you. I'd like to say a massive thank you to everyone who made it this far into the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more average experiences. And if you do, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.